Down in the audience.
I guess here if you want.
Yeah, we're all safe.
I didn't have anything to do.
Yeah.
I've got 6 inches on everybody else.
Okay, open your water now.
Good evening, everybody. If you could come in and take a seat, we're going to get started. And before I even say welcome to everybody, I do want to mention that the City of Grass Valley has hearing assistance devices. So if anybody needs one of those, Christy is in the back there, and you could get one from her if you need one. And I think that's great that you guys do that. Thank you. Wow, you got quiet all very quickly. Thank you so much. My name is Janice Bedane. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Western Nevada County. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight to our candidate forum for the Grass Valley City Council. I want to thank a few people before we get started. Of course, all of our League of Women volunteers who make this possible. All of our media who are joining us again, as they always do, for our forums. Of course, all of our candidates for agreeing to be part of the forum. We appreciate that very much. I want to also welcome our listening and watching audience from KVMR and NCTV and thank both of those organizations for broadcasting tonight. I also want to thank Christy Bashor back there from the City of Grass Valley. She has been so kind and helpful in this whole process, so thank you very much. I want to just give a plug for some things that the League of Women Voters has available to voters. We are really trying hard to bring lots of voter tools to everybody in Nevada County to make it easy to educate yourself about who the candidates are, what the measures are, how to register to vote, check if you're registered to vote. So I just want to tell you that if you want to go to the League of Women Voters website, which is lwvwnc.org, which is a mouthful, but really all you have to do is go out there and pick up this piece of paper. Because if you go to our website, what you are able to do at our website are you can register to vote. You can also check your status. There's buttons all on the left-hand side. Register to vote, check your voter registration status, make sure that you are indeed registered. You can learn about how Nevada County votes with Voters' Choice, which is the new way that we now vote. And just a heads up, our ballots will be dropping in early October, and we do have extended amounts of time to vote, and we have lots of places to vote. This is the second run in as being a Voters' Choice County. Our first one was in the primary. It was incredibly successful. There are 2 things out on our table that explain this if you need any more information about Voters' Choice Act. The other thing we have on our website and also out on the table on this thing is something called Voters Edge. And what Voters Edge allows you to do is to type in your address and your ballot comes up. Everything specific to you. So if you're wondering, do I get to vote for one of the NID divisions, you just have to look it up and you'll see, oh no, I don't actually get to vote for that. Or yes, I do. On that site, you are going to meet all of your candidates if they have provided the information. So that's a throw to you guys too. If you haven't done it yet, please get your information on Voters Edge. The candidates are able to submit statements that are unedited with the exception of taking out bad words. And we also ask that no candidate claim that they are the only candidate who blah, 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 because that's just too difficult to verify most of the time. So those are the only things that we look for. But other than that, you see unedited descriptions of who the candidates are and what they stand for. You also get all of the ballot measures. So Voters Edge is an incredible tool that the League of Women Voters, both nationwide, the state League of Women Voters has really been developing, and I think it's going to really revolutionize the information that people can get easily and quickly on their ballots. On top of that, the last thing that you can get, besides becoming a member of the League of Women Voters, which I encourage you all to do, is that you can also look at the neutral analysis of the pros and cons of all the ballot measures on our website as well. And to that end, we also are going to be having one more candidate forum in this series, which is tomorrow night at the Root Center for the Sheriff. And the following Thursday, we are going to be presenting the pros and cons of the ballot measures, and that's an unbiased analysis of all of those measures, and that's also going to be broadcast. So if you have any questions, there's lots of ballots. They're very confusing. We're going to try and make that simple for you. I am coming down to the end. I would like to ask you to please turn off your cell phones if you have them on. And I want to introduce our moderator for tonight. Our moderator is Jennifer Granger. Jennifer is a League of Women Voters member. She's an attorney in Nevada County and an experienced moderator. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and thank you all again, and thank you, candidates.
Thank you. Welcome, candidates and everyone to the Grass Valley City Council Forum this evening. There are 4 candidates vying for 2 open seats. Ben Aguilar, Bob Brandstrom, Hillary Hodge, and Stephen Slack. We have 4 media representatives tonight. Pascal from Ubinet, Liz Keller from the Union, Jeff Flynn from KNCO, and Paul Emery, KVMR. So thank you, media reps, for being here. I'm just going to go through the ground rules. We had the candidates draw numbers to see who would go first. Each candidate will give a 2-minute opening statement. Ms. Hodge will be first, followed by, who do we have? Mr. Slack, then Mr. Brandstrom, and followed up by Mr. Aguilar. Then at the end of the evening, they'll have an opportunity to give a 2-minute closing statement, and we'll reverse the order. We're going to alternate questions from the audience and the media. So audience, please write your questions on the index cards being held up back there. So audience, write down the questions. They'll go forward to our screeners. The screeners will screen the questions just to kind of try to consolidate so we don't have repetitive questions. And then otherwise, everyone's is depending on how much time we have an hour and a half, we'll probably be able to answer almost everyone's questions. The candidates will each have a 1.5 minutes to respond to the question. And there is an opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal if a candidate wishes to do so. Let's see. Please, everybody, hold your applause until the end of the evening to try and allow more time for candidates to answer questions. Also, please, this is a nonpartisan event, so please no booing or catcalling or wild applause or either way. We're just all here to become informed about the issues and to get to know the candidates. So with no further ado, why don't we start with Ms. Hodge.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event and the City of Grass Valley for providing the space, and the residents of Grass Valley and our community for participating in our democracy. I really appreciate everyone who is here. My name is Hillary Hodge, and I'm a 6th-generation Northern Californian. I have lived within walking distance of Grass Valley City Hall for nearly a decade. I'm running for local office because I love our community. I want to see Grass Valley thrive. Over a year ago, I stepped up to run for public office as a concerned citizen. In this last year, I have spoken to hundreds of people who have expressed their concerns for our community. The people of Grass Valley are concerned about housing, jobs, innovation, and safety. We need to have affordable housing. It is unfair for our community leaders to suggest that enough has been done. While 53% of dwellings in Grass Valley, more than half, are rentals, rent prices in our state and our community have increased at twice the rate of the national average. I spoke with a family in Morgan Ranch last week who are living with 4 generations under a single roof because a 35-year-old mother of 2 cannot afford to have an apartment in this community. She is employed full-time. That's unacceptable. We need to support our small businesses because they are the backbone of our rural economy. Economic development in Nevada County should help the people living here now and should attract businesses that share our values. We can have a sustainable future without sacrificing our small town charm. We need an intelligent approach to innovation and growth. We need high-speed internet to remain competitive. We need to help our homeless population and reduce crime in Western Nevada County, and we need to work with our police department and our community partners in order to do so. I believe it is the job of our government to implement the will of the people and to make government and policy open and accessible to everybody. I'm the right person for the job. I'm asking this community to vote for me, Hillary Hodge, for Grass Valley City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slack?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being here. Thank you very much, Janet, for organizing, and thank you to the volunteers of the League of Women Voters. Your organization is signal. I'm sorry. Your organization is signal to the body politic in any of the cities in which it operates. Women are the principal purchasers of health care and the deciders in their families and are usually the stronger marital partner. And I am so enthusiastic to see you here this evening to promote politics within our city government. My name is Stephen Slack. My family has been in Nevada County for about 30 years. I've been in Grass Valley up the street for about 3 years. I'm interested in bringing a creative, pragmatic, and transparent approach to civic government. I particularly want to hear from you the issues which are of concern, and I'm sure that there'll be differentiation between us between the candidates this evening as we answer your questions. I also want to bring to the forefront the importance of a strategic plan for the development of our community and the maintenance of sound government and of significant financial issues which have been inadequately addressed. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brandstrom.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. And thank you to the League for helping to facilitate this event. And a special thank you to Christy Basher, our city clerk, for giving up yet another evening here in this room. I'm Bob Brandstrom, and I'm running for Grass Valley City Council. Since I'm asking for your vote, you need to know a little bit about me. I think Grass Valley is a fantastic place to live, but I think we can make it better. One of my mantras is leave things better than you find them. So I'm running for Grass Valley City Council to protect our history and quality of life and to make Grass Valley an even better place. These aren't just words to me. I've demonstrated my commitment to this community over the last 5 years since I moved here. I served 2 years as a master gardener. I served for a year as a volunteer in the chaplains program at Sierra Nevada Memorial Hospital. I worked for a year on a TV show at NCTV called Main Street, Nevada County. I've also been working with a group of volunteers at Circle interested in water issues, and Circle awarded me, along with the entire group, their Volunteer of the Year Award for 2017. Most recently, because I have shifted into the electoral process and find this a critical part of our community, I've been volunteering in the last year with the League of Women Voters. I've also been working on projects in the community that have particular importance to me. One of these projects is improving the sound systems in public spaces to help the hearing impaired. The sound system that was mentioned earlier was installed here. This is one of these systems that I am happy to have connected a local business and with the city to install it here. We're also moving forward with that at the in the remodel at the Center for the Arts with their big remodel project. The other project is the Wolf Creek Trail. For the last 2 years, I've been working with the city, the Land Trust, and the Wolf Creek Community Alliance to make this a reality.
Thank you. Mr. Aguilar?
Thank you, everybody, for coming here tonight. My name is Ben Aguilar, and I'm running for Grass Valley City Council. I was born and raised in Grass Valley. My family's been here. Grass Valley's been my home my whole life. I did go away to college for 4 years, came back, and came to a family business. I was able to have a good job and still have a great job in a great community where I live. When I moved here back from college, I instantly got involved in the community. I thought it was very important to give back. So I joined with various nonprofits where I met somebody who ran for city council, and I applied to the planning commission, where I was appointed to the planning commission. I served 4 years, and that is where I got my feet wet in government, where I learned the process of how government works and how development in our community works. And then an opening happened on the city council where I applied to that, and I was appointed to city council where I've served almost 4 years. I'm very proud of Grass Valley and where it has come from and where it is going. We are in a very, very positive momentum right now. The city has many new restaurants, many new businesses. We have a new Measure E tax where we will be able to put more money into our parks, our fire safety, police, and I'm here to carry the torch with that energy and momentum to make Grass Valley even better place. My name is Ben Aguilar, and I ask for your vote in November for City Council. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So we'll first start with an audience question. Mr. Aguilar, we'll start with you, then just go down the line. And just a reminder, you have 1.5 minutes each to answer the question. So Mr. Aguilar, what do you plan to do about helping the mentally ill and homeless?
That is a great question. I've spoken to our police chief recently, and he had mentioned to me that that is one of the most important topics to people right now, helping the homeless, the issue of homelessness, and mental health. We have, as a city council, have partnered with various organizations, and we are attacking it head on by organizing and collaborating as a community. It's important to work with law enforcement, fire, nonprofits, Hospitality House. We have, as a city council, I have voted for Hospitality House in the initial beginnings. We have also, I have also voted for additional beds, and it's very important that we come together as a community to collaborate, and it's really an issue that needs to be hit head on together. And we're not going to be able to solve this just as a city alone. We need to work with our community leaders, our stakeholders, and all be on the same page. If we don't, it will not succeed. But currently we are pushing forward and working with a collaboration.
Thank you. Mr. Brandstrom?
Thank you. The homeless issue, or as I like to call it, the unhoused issue, is one of the biggest problems any community in California faces today. We are no exception. In our area, it's a regional problem, and that requires regional solutions. Grass Valley has limited resources, but within those resources, we need to use them to effectively work with other groups in the community. There are many such groups in the nonprofit sector, including Sierra Roots and Hospitality House, and also the county has a big role to play, particularly in the area of treating the mentally ill. Mental illness is a big part of the homeless problem, so we do need to address that. The other thing is that we really can't address some of these issues until we provide some sort of housing and residences for people to stay. Without a roof over their head, they're not going to be able to focus on many other things. So I would like to see the city work towards housing solutions as well as collaborating with other groups in the county to deal with the mental health issues.
Hodge?
So according to our county's own reports, 60% of the people who are living in our community without homes have been longtime residents, and 85% have family in the area. So these are our community members, and it's really, really important that we understand that this is our concern, that we treat this issue with dignity, and that we approach this issue knowing that it is a problem of our community and the humanity in our community. We can't underfund our community partners and then ask them to work miracles. That's not going to work to try and solve this problem. So yes, we need to collaborate, but we also need to make sure that the people who are on the ground, who are working on these issues, have the resources to solve this problem. So at the forefront are law enforcement officers. And in many ways, they have now become, in addition to law enforcement officers, social workers. So they are approaching problems of compacted issues of mental illness, addiction, as well as homelessness. And so we need to make sure that we approach all of our community's problems with whole systems thinking. I would make sure that we looked at all of our problems in that way, and that every level is available to us, that we are ensuring that we are taking care of each of the issues in our community, and that we are approaching them with whole systems thinking and problem solving that's intelligent and smart. Thank you.
Mr. Slack?
I want to thank the candidates for all of those concerns on a thorny problem. I appreciate the sensitivity to each of those issues. Bob, for your comments about unhoused as opposed to being homeless, and of the need for dignity in treating homeless and mentally ill, as so often there's a stigma of moral failure associated with people who are homeless. The care of the mentally ill was transformed during the Reagan administration when he closed large mental health institutions and essentially rendered those people homeless. And so trying to understand how many of our residents are long-term and simply financially strapped and not able to make it and need assistance and a hand up, and identifying those who have serious mental illness is part of the significant challenge, because the treatment of mental illness and of homelessness is one of the most important social determinants of health, and we cannot begin to address those unless we have a systematic approach. There's also the great concern of funding. The U.S. Senate, in its opiate epidemic bipartisan legislation, that was recently passed 2 weeks ago, has monies which are available. Unfortunately, it doesn't deal with the Medicaid expansion for the institutionally mentally disabled exemption, but it is monies which will be available to the city and to the state, and we need to grab it.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to a media question. So Pascal at Ubinet, you go first, and Mr. Brandstrom, you will answer first.
Good evening, candidates. Thanks for coming. Nice to see you all. Since you are asking for the people's vote, two-part question. A, did you vote in the primary? And B, what is your civic engagement these days within Grass Valley?
Yes, I did vote in the primary, and currently I am a member of the Citizen Oversight Committee for Measure A, which is the library sales tax, and I'm also a member of the Citizen Oversight Committee for Measure B, which is the high school district bond issue that passed recently.
I didn't just vote in the primary, I ran for supervisor in the primary. So I've had a long year of civic engagement, but I've also had a long life of civic engagement. I have voted in every election since I was 18 years old. I have been sitting on boards and working on campaigns and talking with my legislators since before I could vote. I currently sit on the executive board of the Rural Caucus of the Democratic Party in California. Whether or not you have any partisan leanings, this is a really, really important position for our community, and to have access to our elected officials in Sacramento, to be able to talk about rural issues and to be able to put Grass Valley on the map and to be able to say, well, the policy that you're trying to make actually doesn't work that way in rural California, and to get a response and to get crafted legislation that makes sense for our community is hugely, hugely important. And that's what I've been working on this last year.
Mr. Slack?
I have voted in every election since I gained the right to enfranchisement at 18 years of age. So yes, I did vote in the primary. I am relatively new to the city in terms of civic engagement, and my engagement here is in discussion with you and the opportunity to serve you on the city council.
Yes, I did vote in the primary, and I was happy to do so. It was a unique experience by the voter by mail, so I think that it was a change for everybody, and it was a good change. It was actually more convenient for me. My civic engagement includes the 4 years on the Planning Commission. I'm a current city council member. I am a member on the LAFCO Commission, and I'm the chair of the Solid and Hazardous Waste Commission. So I've got quite a bit going on right now. And I'm a new father. Second time.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to an audience question, and my card readers asked me to remind the audience to please address your questions to all of the candidates, not one in particular. Just a reminder. Okay, so we start with Hillary. You'll be answering first. So the question is, lots of talk about wanting affordable housing. Can you please express your knowledge of what the permit fees per unit, square foot, cost of construction, and site construction costs are?
Yeah, so currently, just to break ground on a new housing project, it costs about $40,000 just to break ground. That's before anything else happens. So that's a pretty big deterrent if you are a person who wants to build affordable housing in our community. Once you get into the construction costs and once you get into the materials costs, most units cost around $400,000. So our regular system of how we approach building is going to have to be innovated. We're just going to have to do something different. You know, how contractors approach our current housing situation with sprawl and different ideas isn't working. So let's get creative. I think the accessory dwelling unit model is going to be really helpful, particularly for rural communities, because we will be able to innovate and have more units without having more density. So that spreads it out. We're not talking about sprawl. We're talking about retaining the character of our community. I think that's really important. There are other ways to be innovative, and there are other ways to tackle this problem. So let's move away from the current model. Let's move away from the current fees, and let's go forward with new and innovative approaches to affordable housing.
Thank you. Mr. Slack?
Challenges of that was a two-part question. One was the challenge of affordable question and the piece about fees, which has been well answered. Part of the challenge is the space restrictions within the city of Grass Valley and where affordable housing could or could not be developed in accordance and alignment with the general plan. Thus, our emphasis needs to be with coordination with our county leaders and the Board of Supervisors and understanding how city resources can be dedicated to creating affordable housing in those locations. I'm particularly interested in cohabitation, co-housing models, such as those have been developed in Denmark, where we have small rings of houses in which we place the elderly in the center and then families around the outside. Parking is aside, people walk into the area. There's common grounds for gardening, common grounds for recreation. It's a way of creating smaller micro communities which in our larger communities, and they can be constructed and run for much less funding and offer greater enrichment in our life in terms of social progress than modular buildings which are stacked one atop the other and sold at market or slightly below market at subsidized rates.
Mr. Aguilar?
Let's repeat the question one more time just so that we can.
Right. Okay.
Get-
So the introduction was, there's been lots of talk about affordable housing. And then specifically, are you familiar with the cost of the permit fees per unit, square foot cost of construction, and how does that lead to problems with affordable housing, I think is the question.
That is a very, very difficult question to answer. Part of the issue is the cost of development in California due to codes. There's mitigation fees, school, you have to pay the fire fee for new construction, and the cost of goods. I am in a trade of heating and air, and we see prices increase dramatically for metal and other products just recently. So as a result, contractors have to increase their fee to pass that on to the end user. So when a developer has a lot and they want to build a property on that lot, a structure, they have to pay fees to the various city, school, fire. They also have to have the specific codes, electrical. You have to have a sprinkler system. You have to have various building codes that bring it up to code so that it can be occupied. And that all adds to the cost. So with the Title 24 energy codes and various other fees, it's really difficult to build affordable housing. It just doesn't pencil out for a developer to do that. So as a result, we have to decide where do we concede? Is it the fees? Is it the code, the infrastructure? How do we do that? And that's some of the decisions that we have to make as leaders.
Thank you. Mr. Brandstrom?
Regarding affordable housing, it's important to understand that affordability means two things. First of all, it means what can individuals afford to pay for rent or to buy a home. And it's also affordable from the perspective of a developer who's trying to build homes in the community. And there's a gap between those. Some of that gap is due to the high cost of construction, which has gone up significantly due to the shortage of labor. Some of it is due to the high permit fees. My understanding is that in Nevada County, the typical permit fee is about $45,000 in order to construct a house. One possible way of dealing with this is to look at those fees which are there as mitigation fees for the impact of a new development on the city, and see if there is a way to defer some of those fees if they are related to services that aren't being provided until someone actually moves into a house. If those fees can be deferred until then, when the city actually is going to be providing services, then it lowers the cost of construction and the cost of borrowing money for the developer. So that's one possible thing to look at.
Okay. So next we have a media question.
You have a hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Oh, are you asking for a rebuttal?
Yeah, just a rejoinder in the comments around affordable housing, and it's not an issue of civic governments of our city, but the challenge of creating economic opportunity for individuals and a living wage, because things become more affordable when people have more to take home. Not something that we would discuss in the city panel, but something which in the larger national forum and state forum I'd ask you to consider.
Does anyone else want to? Each of you have a 1-minute opportunity to add.
Well, I'd like to just add that when you have more stock in housing, whether it's more higher end housing, that gives an opportunity for the people a step below that to move up into that next level. And that opens an opportunity for the people below that to move up. And so it's kind of a shift. It's economies of scale where supply and demand, you will have an opportunity to free up a space. If I have an opportunity to buy a bigger home, somebody could buy my little home for a certain price. And it creates opportunity. And I think that if we can create more opportunity for that. That would help. That's one solution.
Yeah, I think Dr. Slack raises a really good point. How affordable housing is defined is based on your income level. And we are very dependent in Grass Valley upon two big sources of revenues. One is revenue from the transient tax on hotels when people come to stay here as tourists. And the other is we're heavily reliant on retirees. Both of those are big in the service industry, which historically pays lower wages. So part of what I am wanting to do in our community is to work with the business community and anyone else that is willing to talk to bring in better paying jobs, preferably in the manufacturing and technology sector, so that we can raise the median income that we have here in town.
I think this audience understands that this is a state and national problem. So let's talk about it in a state and national way. The HUD budget has gone down by 77% since the Reagan era. So we can't supply and demand this away. The original subsidized housing that we used to have that helped veterans, helped first-time home buyers, helped young people move into homes, it doesn't exist anymore. And so local governments are going to have to move into something that makes sense. And I would love it if what we could do is we're all making good money and the trickle-down economy is helping all of us and young people are able to work and it's all going great. And so we're moving up in the houses that we're buying. That is not happening for young people in our community. That is not happening anywhere in America. Let's get smart. Let's build affordable housing. And if we have to get creative to do it, if we have to subsidize it to do it, if we have to find other solutions, then find them.
Okay. Okay, so now we're moving on to a media question. We'll start with Mr. Slack and Liz Keller of the union. It's your question.
Hi, I'd like to talk about the city's approach to cannabis businesses. Nevada City obviously took the lead on this a year ago. They chose to only allow medical marijuana dispensaries and ancillary businesses. What is your feeling about that? Are you interested in allowing marijuana businesses of any type, and would you restrict it to medical?
Cannabis business owners should be allowed to compete for space and public commerce as in any other business. Cannabis containing products which are sold within the jurisdiction of the city should be taxed. The tax should be used for to pay for care for housing for mentally ill and for education of our youth on life choices. Having said all that, you're going to think I'm a great cannabis wank, and I'm not. And as a physician, I can't endorse its use. If you do use it, please don't drink and please don't drive.
Mr. Aguilar?
Right now, Grass Valley has a complete ban on marijuana because we as a city wanted to have complete control over our process moving forward with cannabis. I think it's time to bring that conversation back on the table, but it's important that we do it in such a way that we can learn from other places' mistakes and cherry pick the great ideas so that we're not rushing into something that's really in its infancy right now. There's a lot of uncertainty with the cannabis regulations. It's very confusing, the cannabis growers, and there's a lot of licenses that have to be done to be able to be a participant in this process. And so I think it's important that we go forward very carefully so that we can have what we want as a community in regards to cannabis.
Mr. Brandstrom?
Cannabis is now legal in the state of California under state law. As such, we need to be able to participate in that as a community. I think the city's been wise to take a wait-and-see approach, but I do think it's time that we look seriously at this. I support manufacturing and distribution within the city, perhaps within a particular zoned area that we identify as a cannabis area. I do not support growing within the city limits. I think that's inappropriate in an urban area. This provides an opportunity for us to possibly get some tax revenue net of regulatory costs. It's unclear whether we'd be able to get any significant funds from it. However, it does provide jobs. My conversations with the head of the Nevada County Cannabis Alliance suggests that there's already 50 jobs that have been created in Nevada City through the cannabis industry, and I think Grass Valley could be a part of that. So I think it's time to have a public discussion. This is a big issue, and I'm a real proponent of public agencies inviting the public in and asking opinions and getting information about how to do things and whether to do things. So I think that's what we really need to do, is just start with a big public discussion, an open discussion about this for the community.
Ms. Keller, will you repeat the question? I want to make sure that we're answering your focus.
I was afraid you were going to ask me to repeat it since I didn't actually write it down. The question was, Nevada City took the lead in authorizing medical-only marijuana businesses, and what do you see? Do you see Grass Valley moving towards that? Would you support a dispensary or other ancillary businesses, and would you be interested in restricting it to medical marijuana or leaving it to adult use?
Thank you. So, cannabis growing and distribution is not an emerging industry in Nevada County. This has actually been a long time industry in Nevada County, and we have several people who are currently poised to capitalize on the cannabis economy and expand our tax revenue and our tax base here in our community. So I think it's really, really important that we remove the Wild West element. We don't want people distributing and selling this cannabis on a black market. We want it taxed. We want it regulated. We want to make sure our children are safe. And we want to make sure that people walking in to buy it are, appropriately identified and are of the appropriate age to involve themselves in the recreational use of marijuana. Recreational use of marijuana is the state law. More than 60% of people in California voted to make this the state law. I think that it behooves communities to move forward with the will of the voters and to put in place a system of recreational use that is lawful, that is regulated, that has the safety of our community and our children in mind. We can do that by making sure that people who involve themselves in partaking in marijuana, in cannabis, are, doing so in an appropriate place with appropriate regulations, with, having to show identification to buy this product. Let's do that. Let's move forward with this.
Thank you. And then Mr. Slack.
This is already on the cannabis question?
Oh, you started,
I think
didn't
I
you?
started, yes.
Okay,
So
I'm sorry.
responded.
So we're
I'm glad to take more time, but
No,
if you wish,
we're-
but,
We're going to move on to the audience question. And Mr. Aguilar, you start. Okay, so the question is, some houses here in Grass Valley are in neighborhoods that have compromised access, narrow roads, gravel roads with potholes, single road in and out. What is the responsibility of the city to address this problem, and particularly in light of the fact that our area is susceptible to fires?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the biggest issues was back in the gold rush days, they didn't have the safety requirements that they do now. They didn't have fire trucks that were large, and people rode around in horses. So the city has some pocket areas that have really, really small streets. lack of sidewalks, and as a result, there's fire and safety issues with those. You can't really force somebody to move their house. So what we've done in certain cases is no parking lanes in certain streets where you cannot park on the street. I know up on the hills and Wall Street and little side streets, there's it's difficult to navigate. So how do you fix that? It's there. People's property would have to be eminent domain, and there would be quite a cost as far as the infrastructure to the roads to fix that. Fortunately, we have CAL FIRE up at the airport, and they've done drops in the city limits in certain cases, not necessarily as a result of a wild, crazy fire, but they've prevented quite a bit. So we have fire resources that will be able to help with fire. But unfortunately, we live in a very, very quaint gold rush community that has these streets.
Mr. Brandstrom?
Anybody who walks or drives in Grass Valley knows that we have roads and sidewalks that need to be repaired. This is particularly true on some of the more outlying areas. There's a distinction that needs to be made between any private roads that may exist. I know there are some in the county. I don't know if there are any within the city limits, but private roads are not the responsibility of the city. Public roads are, and we need to make sure that those do provide safe routes for people to drive, especially in emergencies such as fires, and to provide access to fire vehicles to get in to fight fires. We are fortunate that we now have a gas tax that is bringing in money to the city, and the city will be getting in the neighborhood of $200,000 a year from the gas tax. In addition, the voters of Grass Valley, in my opinion, wisely approved Measure E, which doubled the sales tax within the city, increasing the funds available for a variety of things, but including roads and sidewalks. So we have increased resources now, and I believe that we should basically work with the community to come up with a priority list of where we're going to work and improve things and get to work.
Thank you. Ms. Hodge?
Thank you. So as we develop in Grass Valley and as we expand, as we put in affordable housing, as we develop, we need to make sure that we respect our urban wildland interface. We need to make sure that our firefighters are protected from having to fight fires that would put them at undue risk. So we currently have several communities in Nevada County that have single road access, single road exit, where thinking about evacuating is troubling and at times terrifying. We have an aging population. Many people in our community do not have enough money and do not have enough human power or human strength to clear their wildland. And so we need to have community partnerships. We need to come at this from a multiple level approach. We need to make sure that our community members who aren't able to clear their brush have access to services and to, available resources, so that if they're not able to, we can make sure that they have, services that will, and community members that can help. When we develop, when we expand, we need to make sure that how we're expanding makes sense for our whole community, that it makes sense for our wildfire prevention plan, that it makes sense for evacuation. Thank you.
Black?
I concur with your aspect and approach around the issues of fire safety that are outside of the city. As I heard that question, whoever it was that offered, I apologize that you live in a place that's got a pothole in your road. This is a failure of basic services of the city, and is a manifestation of how the current city council is asleep at the wheel in many aspects of the delivery of basic services. What is the index and measurement of the number of streets that need to be repaired? What is the budget that has been forecasted in order to do that? What is the work schedule that's going to be done to create reasonably paved roads that are safe and sidewalks through the rest of our city? That is something which needs to be dealt with in a more vigorous manifestation than what is being done through its current leadership.
Thank you. Okay, we have a media question next from KNCO Jeff Flynn. And Mr. Brandstrom, you'll go first.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this on tonight. All four of you are running for Grass Valley City Council for the first time. Mr. Aguilar is on the council, but he was appointed. This is the first time you're actually running for election. There has to be a motivating factor or reason that you would give up your free time and go out and campaign and come to forums like this. There has to be a moment or something where you were thinking about, gosh, the city council's doing this wrong, or if I was on the council, I would do it this way. For all four of you, what are those issues?
Actually, I don't buy the supposition of the question that there must be something wrong that I'm here to fix. My motivation for running, quite simply, is that I love Grass Valley, and I have come to believe that I have a really, really good set of skills from my work experience and my volunteer experience that I can bring to bear to help solve the city's problem. And there was no blinding flash of a single moment. It was a process that took place over about a year and a half, that I've evolved from being a behind-the-scenes person to realizing that I could be someone who offered leadership in this community. So that's why I'm here, and I'm having a good time. This is great to be up here wanting to serve the community. So
I appreciate the question, and for me it's pretty simple. It's about economic development. So that's what I've done primarily in Nevada County since I've lived here for a decade. I have tried to help people who are entrepreneurs expand their businesses. I have helped businesses in our community expand so that they can hire new people. But I've also watched people my age, I'm 38 years old, move out of the county because they didn't have jobs here. They couldn't find good paying jobs. They had skilled, educated labor to offer, and there was no job in order for them to stay in this community. I know that we can expand our economy in a way that makes sense for our community, in a way that young people can live here, can raise families here, and that's really, really important to me. And I think a lot of the economic development has focused on these magical unicorns in Silicon Valley who are going to move up here and provide jobs. We have people in this community who are providing jobs now. If we invest in local talent, if we expand the businesses that are here now, we can have those jobs. And I want to see Nevada County thrive from Nevada County. And that's what's important to me. And I see this, I don't want any more empty storefronts downtown. I want to make sure that the people who are here have access to jobs and economic opportunities that make our community better. And that's my motivation for running.
I'm going to become a grandfather in about 3 weeks. And it led me to reflect with our current political situation that I needed to contribute more to my community. And I was thinking, well, if not now, when? And if not me, then who? And I began to think and examine some of the dynamics of the city of Grass Valley and its city council, the lack of leadership in certain areas, and the need for creating strategic planning for our community above and beyond what exists in the general plan, which is codification of how and when we build buildings and what are going to be the setbacks, etc. But instead, what is it that we can do for social progress for our community? Are you healthy? Are you safe? What opportunities do you have? Those are the issues that led me to file to this election. And in addition, as I was gaining insight into the functions of the council, I learned that there's an $18 million unfunded pension liability for our employees. That is an astonishing risk for this community. and particularly for our city employees who, if they work for their 5 or 10 years, find themselves without a pension, we would be considered to have provided poor oversight and care to our community and its employees.
Mr. Aguilar?
My motivation, well, the city was in quite a predicament during the downturn of the economy. We had a huge issue with sales tax dwindling, and now the economy has ramped up. We are in an uptick, and as a result, the current city leadership, with myself included, had to make a lot of very responsible decisions and very fiscally conservative decisions to mitigate a lot of these issues. We couldn't do a lot of the fun projects that a city enjoys, such as improving the parks. There just wasn't funding for it. There wasn't funding for a lot of issues. Now we are in a better place. We have a new police chief. The city has hired from within, and we have a great young leader who's bringing technology and innovation to the police department. We have new fire trucks that will help keep us safe with more technology, and with the passage of Measure E, we can do a lot more. The economy's great. As an employer in the city, I can hire a lot more people right now, but there's no bodies to do it. And I see that across the construction industry. And I see a bright future. I think Grass Valley's thriving right now. I see a great future for us, and that is why I want to continue to run.
Thank you.
Jennifer,
Yep.
I'd like to respond.
Okay. 1 minute.
Thank you. I have a real strong interest in the unfunded pension liabilities and have been aware of this issue for a number of years. I spoke before the NID board a couple of years ago about my concerns about their unfunded liabilities and what I saw as a dereliction of duty and not taking it seriously. I've also spoken before the city council about this, but I want to say that my concerns have been, I don't want to say alleviated, but I've been really encouraged by what I have seen the city government doing to deal with this problem. They have, through a difficult period recovering from the economic crash, set aside $1.5 million pension reserve so that there are funds available to pay the city's pension costs for a full year should we go into another economic downturn. And this is a required payment to CalPERS. In addition, they are talking about setting aside more funds to deal with the fact that the liability is increasing and will continue to increase for the next 5 years. And I highly applaud what the city's doing. I think it's very financially responsible.
Okay. Does anyone else want the opportunity to have an extra minute?
I'll take the extra minute. Thank you.
Oh, and Mr. Slack, I did receive a card that asked me to ask you to please speak up.
Oh, thank you. I apologize. Thank you for the minute of rejoiner. Driving a new fire truck down a potted street, which is narrow and has difficult access, is not sound civic government in a situation where the employees are at risk for their pension funds. Rather, it's a demonstration of mediocre civic governments, and the characteristic of mediocrity is that it is so easily obtained. We need a city council which can excel in leadership, and that requires helping our city manager in crafting a strategic vision and in executing on it and holding people accountable, and government being transparent regarding its financial implications. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you want to reply first?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to respond. The city actually set aside, I believe, $1.75 million for the unfunded pension liability. It is one of the biggest issues that cities in California face right now, and as a result, we have set aside funds to help mitigate those issues. There's going to be a lot of hard roads ahead. If there is another economic downturn, we can be in some serious trouble. That's a lot of money that we have to pay. The unfunded liability is something that you should probably look up and what the city has been doing. It's very important that we as a council be fiscally conservative with our funds. And with our current staff and finance director, we've been able to get the adequate information so that we are positioning ourselves for the future.
Thank you. Okay, so now we go to an audience question, and Hillary Hodge, we begin with you. The question is, if we allow high-priced subdivisions to be built in Grass Valley, will we negatively impact our local economy with gentrification?
Yes. Here's what's happening, and this is really, it's really hard for me as a young person, for me as someone who's still working in the job economy. I am I'm a working person. I'm a young person. So, for example, the majority of our firefighters in our community do not live in Nevada County because they cannot afford housing here. So a fire breaks out, and that was very quick. And we have to have our firefighters drive from Yuba City in order to help us. That's really, really upsetting. That's really disturbing. We cannot attract jobs to this community if we cannot afford to house the people having those jobs. We cannot attract doctors to this community if all we are offering is McMansions and the doctors can't even afford them. We have an economy where we have many transplants, and we are lucky to have the infusion of retirement funds from the sale of Bay Area homes come to this community and fund projects like solar electricity and new landscaping. That's great. It employs many, many people in this community. But there is a disruption in housing because there is a wobbled side towards unaffordable homes, towards McMansions. And it is to the detriment of working people in our community.
Slack?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. If we allow high-priced subdivisions to be built in Grass Valley, will we negatively impact our local economy with gentrification?
That's a difficult question to ask sincerely, because what we would like as a community is something that's balanced and where we would be able to have firefighters able to afford housing and live in our community as well. But in fact, when one looks at what happens to gentrification economically, the answer is probably no. It probably brings benefit because these are individuals with high resources who can afford to live and who can afford to live in the economy and in the area and the economy. The downside, of course, is the social cost of that. Can you change it? People have property rights. So unless civic government is going to say you cannot build that here, and you have a code which the city can rely on when litigation occurs, then the answer is yes. Gentrification is something which occurs in large cities and small, and is a fact of economic progress.
Mr. Aguilar?
So, can you repeat it one more time?
Yes.
It's a loaded question.
If we allow high-priced subdivisions to be built in Grass Valley, will we negatively impact our local economy with gentrification?
Well, there's a few parts to that question. If you own property and it's zoned for that specific use, you have an economic right to develop that property. You have an economic right to go through the process. The general plan is a document that is a living document where it tells you what you can and can't do within certain zones in the city. So if somebody had a piece of property that wanted to build a housing development, they have a right to do that if it's within the legal limits. Would that impact the economy? I think it would impact it more positively. It will create more jobs. It will create more opportunities for restaurants and businesses to sell to these people that come in or move up. And gentrification, it's really hard to say if that would be a byproduct of it. But I look at the housing development Homes by Town put in, and they were originally going to be set at the 300, low fours, I believe it was. It was high threes and low fours, and then it gradually went up to $500,000. And the economy was what drove that. They were able to sell that home for that much. So it really drove me out of that affordability bracket to buy in there. It would have been nice, but I think it's more positive than negative.
Brandstrom?
I'm not sure what the question asker means by gentrification. I have a rough idea of what that means, but I'm going to take what I've learned in the community, which is that there's a real bias against building expensive homes here that people from outside the area will be buying and moving here, and that doesn't provide housing for the local people. We need housing. We need housing for local people. We need workforce housing. We also need to accommodate people who want to move here. I'm one of them. I moved here 5 years ago. So I want to give an example of something that I think shows one of the ways we may move. I live at Wolf Creek Lodge Co-Housing, which is a 30-unit high-density or higher density living arrangement. It's not a single-family home. I'm guessing that about half of the people there came from outside the area, and about half the people are from the area. What's important is that we built 30 units there and provided additional housing in the community for a variety of people. That's what we need to do, is keep building here, and we have some good things coming in this community. There are hundreds of homes in the works. Some of them are at the Dorsey Marketplace, which would be strongly in the affordable range, and in a wide range of houses. There's proposals at the Loma Rica development from both affordable on up to higher price homes. So I think we just need more homes in general.
Hodge, 1 minute rebuttal.
Nevada County is the oldest county by average age in California. We currently do not have enough people to staff the needs of the current dementia and Alzheimer's patients that we have in this community. If we are not building affordable homes for staff who can help with service jobs, who can help with nursing, who can help with healthcare, it is to the detriment of our community. We need to do better with affordable housing. It cannot simply be large-scale homes for rich people. We will need our service workers. We will need our nurses. We will need the employees who help this community thrive. And if they don't have homes, they will not be here.
Anyone else want another minute? Or
Take a minute.
okay.
There's a lot to talk about. There are a lot of homes in the works that will potentially be affordable. And affordable is really a generic term. I'd like to say that there needs to be a balance between low-income housing, very low-income housing, the next level up, I don't even know the name of it, but there needs to be more housing, and there needs to be a variety of the types. So more apartments would be adequate. And there are some projects that I have helped approve. That's the Loma Rica Ranch. That was several years ago. And they have a variety of different homes, condos, and apartments that have the ability to be built. And by having a choice, I will be quiet now. Because it is getting late and I see people fading.
I'll take the minute of rebuttal just to offer some additional thoughts on the question, which was about gentrification and its effects, and Hillary's sound comments about affordable housing, which does not directly respond to the question of the economic effect of gentrification, but expresses the concern that what that brings is a social transformation of our community and whether or not that is desirable. I would argue that it's not, but I do not understand under the current structure of the general plan how one can deprive an owner of a property right to say, you cannot build your McMansion here, sir. So I think it's a different question, and it gets back to the affordability issue.
Except that your local government creates those zoning laws.
Okay, so we're moving on to a media question. The media question is with Paul Emery of KVMR, and Mr. Slack, you answer first.
Yeah, well, we're talking about affordable housing. Let's talk reality here, that there are in Nevada County literally thousands of people that live in illegal dwellings of all kinds. I'm talking about everything from yurts in backyards. I'm talking from trailers in backyards. I'm talking to recreation vehicles. I'm talking to basements that have been remodeled or that have been adapted. I'm talking about tents. Some people have their children living in tents in their backyard. If elected to the city council, would you be in favor of relaxing building codes to allow more second units in Grass Valley, in the Grass Valley city limits, to allow more apartments, more houses to be redesigned so they could be apartments, and even more recreation vehicles in backyards for families, for children of people that live here. Children that grow up in this community can't afford to live here. So would you be a leader in relaxing the building code process and trying to move forward on this level? Thank you.
I'm not sure if I would. I'm not sure if I would choose the word relaxing. I think rather a change in social engagement, because we can look at issues of social progress for those individuals that are emarginated or living in trailers or camps or illegal, what are currently outside of the rules and regulations. So in that sense, for those individuals, yes, I would be quite in favor of that. I also think that with regard to property rights, there's a need to define what building codes are going to be permitted in order to allow the type of community that we want. This issue of gentrification, affordable housing, it's just the issue that Hillary banged on, which was the fact that the general plan was established 20 years ago, and much of the zoning is already set. That's a challenge to change.
Mr. Aguilar?
Okay, to answer your question, relaxing building codes, we really can't relax the building code because that's set by the state of California. And if we say, oh, we're not going to have, we're going to allow you not to have the fire sprinkler in there and your home burns down, you could sue the city if we do not enforce the building code. That opens up a big liability for the city. So that comes from the state level. The city does not have any deciding factor in the building code. It's brought to us from the state. In regards to second dwelling units, you are allowed to have a second dwelling unit on your property if it meets the certain setbacks. As a property owner, you have a right to economically develop your property within the scope of the law. And if you want to put a second unit on the home, on your property, you are allowed to do so. The state of California is realizing the issue with housing. And so what they're doing is they are relaxing the code for second units to where you do not have to bring it up to the current code. If you don't have a fire sprinkler system, for example, if you don't have a fire sprinkler system in your house and you want to build a secondary dwelling unit, you don't have to put that in the new addition or the dwelling. So they are coming up with some solutions at the state level. I don't think it's fast enough. The cogs of government are extremely slow.
Brandstrom?
I think we really need to take a multifaceted approach because building codes are set at the state level. We do need to work with our state legislators to try and, I don't know if relaxing codes is the right word, but change codes to make housing more affordable to build, and that will make it more affordable to buy. They have done so recently on accessory dwelling units, and there are changes already taking place in our county. In 2016, I believe it was about 17 accessory dwelling unit permits were given out by the county. In 2018, that was 31 as of to date. So it is increasing, but it's a small number. That will not solve the problem. So I think we also need to look at other creative alternatives that we can do here or that we can work with the state legislature to do. Some of the things that I've seen in the last couple of years that are things we might want to consider. People are taking shipping containers, stacking them, cutting windows into them, and building homes in these shipping containers. They're solid, they're stable, they make a creative use of an existing resource, probably at low cost. Another option I've seen, I don't know the costs on this, and that is 3D printers that are programmed to print and control a concrete device that lays down a wall in a matter of hours. This is new technology, but those are the kinds of ideas I think that we need to explore as not just a community, but as a state to make housing more affordable.
The sad reality is that this is already happening in our community. We have someone right now in our community probably sleeping in their car, maybe outside of this city hall. We need to be more responsible as citizens to take care of the less fortunate in our community, and we need to make sure that the people living in dwellings that are not currently legal or up to code have opportunities to move up, to find housing, that we have more housing stock that makes sense. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals recently ruled that the no camping ordinances in communities like ours and in Orange County and in Nevada City, all over the state of California, are illegal unless there are alternatives like housing beds. We currently do not have enough beds in our community to house the homeless that are here now, and so our no camping ordinances only criminalize sleeping and being human without a home. We need to make sure that we have a representative on our city council who can have a conversation with the people in Sacramento. I am that representative. I have those relationships. I currently can call many of the people who are legislators in Sacramento and say, look, this isn't going to work for rural California. This isn't going to work to have a building code that makes no sense for people who live in the country. I'm the only candidate on this dais right now who's endorsed by one of California's constitutional officers. So let's make sure that we have a seat at the table in Sacramento so people can say, look, this is not working for Grass Valley. This isn't working for Northern California. Let's do something better.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have an audience question, and Ben, we start with you. It's probably going to be the last question of the night, and then we'll go to closing statements. Okay. Mr. Aguilar, what is your position on the Dorsey Marketplace?
Well, that's kind of a dicey question because I would be potentially voting on that. So my position is they are entitled to the process. The developer is going to come and to the city with an application. They are going to go through the design review. They will go to the planning commission, and then it will be kicked up to the city council. So some of the elements that I can comment on this are there are housing elements to this project, and that is greatly needed within our community. For instance, the applicant wanted to have a series of apartments, market rate apartments, where there would be, I believe, a dog park, a pool, and there's many people in our community that want affordable, market rate apartments. And this is an opportunity for Grass Valley to have that. They've decreased the amount of commercial space. As of right now, I think it's something that can benefit our community. I live close to that project, far away. To be able to still vote for it, I have to be within 500 feet to not vote. So it's across the freeway. But I have to be very careful as a public official because I cannot say yes to something and no to something before it goes through the process and hear it with an open mind.
Brandstrom?
The Dorsey Marketplace is a mixed-use project, and as it originally came to the community, it was proposed to have, I think, 90 apartment units and a large commercial space. One of the things that I think is important in government and in the private sphere is that people listen to each other. And I think that the Dorsey Marketplace developers listen to the community for multiple reasons, but one of which is community input. They have revamped the proposal, and I understand it'll be coming back in detail, starting through the process has been outlined, starting with the Development Review Committee, or the Design Review Committee, in the near future. And that when they do so, they have increased the number of housing units from 90 to 140 and decreased the size of the commercial area. So I think that will be very advantageous to the community. I can't say yay or nay one way on the project itself because I haven't seen the proposal itself. So I would need to wait until that actually came before me as a council member, if it did, to make a specific comment. But I like the idea of multiple use properties and of providing housing in our community.
The good news is that the Dorsey Marketplace project has now included housing. When it first started, it did not. So there is power in community participation. I want to say that again. There's power in community participation. It's really, really important that this community shows up to talk about civic engagement and projects that happen in our community. As a general statement, overall, I think it's really important that we understand the changing economy. The retail economy is atrophying. Kmart nationally is going out of business. JCPenney nationally is going out of business. Those are two biggest retailers in this community. When we have projects go forward in our community, we want to make sure that it's healthy for the long term. Healthy for the long term includes affordable housing. It includes walkability. It includes community involvement. Dog parks are amazing. Let's do more of those. Making sure that our developers understand the character of our community and making sure that our community holds our developers accountable to the character of our community is essential to all development going forward.
I would pretty much concur with Hillary's comments around the value of community participation in input. As one can see that the developer was presenting his plan, he was following the process that's prescribed by regulation. He got feedback from the community. He changed his plan. The new plan meets needs for housing. It's a reduced amount of retail space. Your next opportunity to participate is when you take a look at the design and see whether architecturally you like it or whether it's an eyesore.
Okay, so now we move on to closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes. We start with Mr. Aguilar, Mr. Brandstrom, then we jump to Mr. Slack, and Hillary is the last person to go. So Mr. Aguilar.
Well, thank you everybody who stuck around to educate themselves on the candidates tonight. It's really important to understand the process and be a part of the process and educate yourself on who you are going to vote for. I am very happy to say that I've served the city of Grass Valley for almost 8 years now. And as a council member, it has been very, very important to me to make Grass Valley an even better place than what I left it. I see Grass Valley coming from the downturn in a very, very hard financial position. And under the current leadership, we've actually helped the city become stronger and more healthy. There's still a lot of work to do and a lot of momentum that we have right now. And I want to put my energy to making Grass Valley a better place to live for everybody. There's a lot of projects I want to work on and will continue to work on. And I want to live here until I die. This is my home. This is the home of a lot of my friends. And I want to help make that a better, Grass Valley, a better place for them as well. I want to make it a better place for my family, who I have 2 little ones. One is not old enough to understand what I'm saying right now, but it's a place where we can raise a family, and we have a great sense of community here. You can walk down the street and see a bunch of folks that you know, and it's hard to go to the grocery store for a quick visit. It ends up being a long time because you see tons of people you know. I want to keep Grass Valley very, very nice like that. And come November, I ask for your vote. I have the energy for this right now, and I want to be on the city council, and I ask for your vote in November. Thank you.
This is the point. This is the point in the evening where we get to the nitty-gritty. There are 2 positions available and 4 candidates. That means you get 2 votes. And this is the point where I tell you why I think I'm the person you should vote for, one of those 2 people. I'm not just committed to making Grass Valley a better place, as I said in my opening comments. I know local issues, I know the people, and I know the organizations working on those issues. This is because over the last 4 years, I've been involved and a participant in the Nevada County Citizens Academy, the Nevada County Community Leadership Institute 1-year training program. I've attended ERC, that's Economic Resource Council meetings, for 1.5 years. I've attended NID board meetings for 2.5 years, and I've been attending Grass Valley City Council meetings for over 1 year. So through these things, I have learned what the local issues are, who the local people are. I'm a problem solver, and I have built relationships with these people, and I believe I can continue to work with them to solve our community's problems. And finally, I have the skills necessary to get stuff done. And that's because I have a 40-year history of volunteering in any community I've lived in, and a career where I've worked 6 years for the state, so I understand the government perspective. I've worked in the banking industry for a decade and the healthcare industry for a decade. Through all of these, I've developed really good skills in analytical problem solving, financial understanding, understanding the role of regulation, and where the problems are with that. If you'd like more info, I'll be happy to talk with you afterwards, and I have some handouts that'll tell you what my website is, and you can find more information there. I'd like to thank you all again for coming and ask 2 things of you. I'm Bob Brandstrom, running for Grass Valley City Council. I ask for your vote. I also ask you to tell a friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming this evening. I appreciate your time and also the questions from the press. And again, thanks to the League of Women Voters for organizing our event tonight. The city of Grass Valley faces challenges which are both unique and typical for the state of California. It is led by a city council which has inadequately addressed the challenges of homelessness and of affordable housing. There is a need to create a social progress index with which we can measure with success and hold accountable our public officers and guide our employees and partner with our non-for-profits in creating effective social change. This can be effected through a social plan and a strategic plan, which is monitored by sound fiscal health. I offer the opportunity to provide that leadership. I seek your endorsement and your vote, and I would like you to go home this evening, talk with your family, and during the next week, talk with 2 people and ask them to vote. Thank you.
I have heard story after story from folks in our community who feel like community policy is confusing on most days, and in many cases, failing the people who live here. As your next city council member, I will work for our community with collaboration and transparency. We need smart growth, affordable housing, economic development, and community safety. I believe that with smart investment and smart community planning, we can fix our housing shortage. We must work in collaboration with city governments and contractors in Nevada County to build suitable community homes that our young families and fixed income seniors can afford. We need good jobs. We cannot build a strong economy on entry-level and service positions. As executive director of Sierra Commons, I helped to create good jobs in Nevada County. I understand our economy, how it's changing and where it's going. We need to invest in local talent and grow from there. And we need to understand that we cannot attract new businesses or workers if they cannot afford to live here. Let's approach our community's problems by solving them with whole systems solutions. If elected, I will work for our community. I will work with our community partners, and I will build bridges across all of our municipalities and with the state of California so that we can solve our problems with collaboration. I will work to bring clarity about process and policy so that our community feels like they have access to their government. I will work for affordable housing, good jobs, smart innovation, and public safety. I'm Hillary Hodge, and I'm the right choice for Grass Valley. Vote for Hillary Hodge for Grass Valley City Council in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, members of the media, and our audience. Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm Jennifer Granger on behalf of the League of Women Voters, and please come again. Thank you.
That's true.